The audio is on in the room.
We're good?
Yes.
Okay, thumbs up, Cindy.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and start our work session, the planning and zoning work session. The title for tonight is to discuss Title 15 definitions pertaining to dwelling, lodging, and housing. And I think that our primary goal is to make better sense of our definitions, or to make them concise, or they're just kind of all over the place, and it's hard for us as people that work with them on at least a monthly basis to make hide their hair of them. So we have our packet, 20 pages long. The last section, the 3 pages at the end, are kind of maybe beyond the scope of the title of our work session, but we have discussed that we need to define an accessory building or an accessory
Dwelling
unit. We do have accessory building defined in our current code in Title 15. So I want to welcome Vanessa as our new P&Z commissioner. Thank you for applying, and don't be bashful, okay? And I'm going to let Jackie give us a little overview of what she's prepared for us this evening.
So, welcome, Vanessa. Just like Cindy had said, over the last couple years, there's been some major talk about updating and correcting our definitions so that they meet the requirements of life safety, fire code, building code. It is extremely hard for the fire department and the building department to go do inspections based off of some of the definitions we have and making them work within their code. So, and we have a lot of them. We have, quite a few for what dwelling is, quite a few for what a house is, and what a unit is, and what lodging is. So, this packet, like Cindy said, the last couple pages are strictly, discussing how we might see how a definition could be put for short-term rental, bed and breakfast, those type of things, because those are all listed in the lodging and dwelling portion. The first page that I want to have everyone, I know that a lot of you understand how code is supposed to be written, but I just really want to push out the terminology of how a definition works in the planning world. So it's just a little refresher. That's on page 2 and 3 of the packet. And then if we want to just compare what our sewer code has versus what the fire department or the International Fire Code and the International Building Code shows, and try to compare those and maybe possibly, lower our list a little bit. But this is just a general work session where we can discuss how we want to see our definitions in the future.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. One thing that Jackie has included in our definitions from 2 other peninsula communities, Homer and Kenai, and I was amazed at how few they have. Homer is another tourist town, and I thought maybe they'd have a few more. It would be great to only have that many, and maybe we can get there, but they must have they must have some more hidden in their code somewhere. Or maybe they use them straight from the fire and building code. Maybe they don't separate that out, and when they get asked what's the definition, instead of looking in two different places, maybe they go say, oh, well, that's in the building code that we've adopted. Do they adopt the International Building Code in Homer?
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
anyone tell me?
Their code does
They do?
reference those codes. So, like, while
So-
going through Homer's and Kenai's, and so does Anchorage, they reference either IBC or the International Fire Code. So, at
So
the
that
very
we
beginning
don't
of
have to have it in two places.
Yeah, in the very beginning of their definitions, it states that if can't remember the wording, and I'll make sure to send it so we have it for the next time, but it's something to the effect of, if the definition doesn't exist, then reference IBC, International Building Code, and International Fire Code. And Alaska State Code.
Oh. I like that.
Me too.
Okay. That would probably limit a lot of these. So I'm going to open up the floor for other people to put their 2 cents in before we start going page by page. Maybe if you have some guidance on how to attack this. Otherwise, I've made some notes in mine, and I've kind of expressed that, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to open the floor. Anybody?
Madam Chair.
I can see all of you, and if you go like this, I know there's a raise the hand on under more. You can raise your hand like that, or you can just go like this, and if I can see you. If you're on the phone, is it *9? *9 if you've dialed in on the phone.
And Madam Chair, I just wanted to let everyone know that, in case you haven't noticed, we do have the fire chief on this call also. So if there's questions regarding the fire code or the building code.
Thank you for that. Okay, I see Tom had his hand up, and Nathaniel, did you have your hand up?
No.
Nope. Okay, Tom, go ahead.
Do you mind, would it be possible to get you to turn your camera down just slightly so we can see a little more of your chin? You look like you're kind of like looking over the top of a fence.
Maybe I like to look over the top.
Maybe it is. I kind of phrase it that way. If it could, it just be a
Let
little
me
bit.
see.
There, that's so much. Oh, perfect. Excellent.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all. That's my only comment.
You want to see my voice? Okay. You see my lips. You read lips, huh? Okay. Before we get started, I have one quick question on page 9. After the land use allowed in that B lodging, those 1 through 9, are they in the code? Or is that just you're adding it from somewhere else?
No, they're in the code under lodging.
That 1 through 9, okay.
Yep, under B.
All right. Okay. All right. Anyone have any idea where we want to start with this?
Well, I would make, and I didn't really, I only got about halfway through the list because I ran out of time and stuff, but the concept of trying to reduce numbers and following, IBC International Code and something like Homer, and if that made sense, and we want to, for 2 different reasons, if it makes sense to us, but also if it's more similar to the other communities in our area, that also makes sense. And if that's the direction we want to go, then we really should just be focused on that rather than trying to say, oh, should we go down page by page and say this goes, this doesn't, redefine that. I mean,
Okay.
It's a fairly big conceptual idea.
It is. It is. Okay, let's. I've got my packet turned, so I've got the Homer page pulled up, and I'm looking at our page. If we look and see, are we happy with what Homer has? And if Clinton's on there and can join in and say, because they only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 definitions. And we have almost 11 pages.
And Clinton, it's page
9.
15 that she's referring to for everyone in the packet, page 15.
Yes, page 15. And actually apartment house, they really don't have the definition, they just say dwelling, multiple family. And I did look at the International Building Code and the Fire Code, and they're a little harder to read because they use different zoning codes than our code uses zoning codes, but I think we can kind of understand where a house would fit into them. I mean, they've got apartment houses, boarding houses, hotels, live-work units, motels, vacation timeshares. They're a lot more detailed. But where one of ours would fit into it, I don't think we need to have it in our code.
Cindy, Chief
Yep.
Kreitz has his hand up.
Oh, there you are. I see you now. Go ahead, Clinton.
So I agree. I think less is more. However, it is nice when sometimes you have a little bit more definition, such as, and I'm on page 12.
Okay.
When you talk about what is a dwelling unit, what is a guest room, what is a sleeping unit, I think that becomes important, probably more so for Jackie when she's looking at the different zonings, auto commercial and residential, multifamily, single family, and we start counting rooms. When we see what does Seward's code, you can and cannot rent or have a sleeping unit. But sometimes some of those definitions, they're so vague right now that people say, well, I'm not renting this, but I'm renting this, and then we have to try to figure out how we classify that. So, again, I do agree less is more, but it would be nice to have a couple of those definitions more set in stone.
Well, Clinton, if we say that we're going to follow the International Building Code, which our code says that, and the Fire Code, the ones that you're looking at on page 12 are in the International Building Code. So we already have those definitions if that's how we're going to go. But I've made some notes on that page about some differences. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, you were cutting out.
Oh, sorry. No, I've made some notes on that page, and that I like. I mean, I've got use this one and things like that. So if we can take the ones that are in the International Building Code out of our code, scratch them, and just say we will follow the International Building Code and the International Fire Code definition when we don't have one in our code for it. I mean, you guys will be first.
I think that's an excellent idea because we're always going to, refer back to IBC and IFC. So I think that is a great plan to say refer to. The one area that, and we may get to this later when we get down to whatever that's 17. The one definition that IBC and IFC and Seward do not address is unoccupied. So DC by default is only owner occupied. You live in that residence, you know that person's in your house, and what we don't have addressed is what happens when you own a house and you rent that house but you don't live there. And that's kind of a problem here in Seward, and we don't have a definition for that.
We don't define long-term rental?
Short-term rental.
Well, no, long-term would be like, if I owned a house and I rented it out, I've been renting it for the last 5 years, which isn't the case, but, I mean, that to me is a long-term rental. Short-term rental, I read what Jackie had in here, where it's like, the summertime rental, 5 months over the summer. But to me, that's a long-term rental. If you rent it over 30 days, it's a long-term rental.
So no, ma'am, what I'm saying is, we have several homes, and it depends on the zoning district. I can't do it here at my house, but, if you live in certain zones, and Jackie, speak up if you want, you can your whole house nightly, so that's short-term rental, but you don't live there. You don't have a definition for that.
We don't.
Owner unoccupied short-term rental.
We have the definition for a B&B, which is owner occupied, and Clinton is correct. We do not have a definition for owner non-occupied, but the problem with it is if that person that doesn't live there rents to multiple families the rooms, so they have a 3-bedroom house and they're renting each room to somebody different. We don't have a definition for that, and that comes across with issues in the fire department on how they define that space being used. Because somebody that lives there that rents rooms as a B&B, they're able to tell them how to escape. They're using common areas, but in this case, it's a house with 3 different rooms with possibly 3 different families and 3 different sets of occupants.
And I'd like to add to that, so there's 2 different scenarios that can happen, and I'm perfectly fine with scenario 1. You own a residence, you do not live there, and you rent it nightly to one family. There is no issue with that. That family walks in that home, they can get to know the layout, let's say the parents or whoever's in charge, whoever rented it, they know there's 8 people in that house. If there's a fire, they can come to me at the side of the road and say, I've got 8 people in that house, or all 8 of us are out of this house. The problem comes when you own a house, you don't live there, and you rent it to 3 families, like Jackie said, and now there's a fire. And I come up to the first person out the door and say, how many people are inside? I don't know. I think there was another family in one of those other rooms, but I don't know. You don't get to know the layout of the land exactly, or of the house. So there's no fire separation requirements in IRC or IBC, but it was built as a regular residence. So that's the scary part on our part, and it seems like there should be some kind of definition so that we can say this type is not allowed, but yet we don't have that definition.
Do you have it in the fire code?
No, ma'am, that is not addressed at all in the fire code.
Do you have it in the building code?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay, Tom, I'll get to you, but Andy's had his hand up for a while. Go ahead, Andy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll tell you what we do have is in our land uses allowed table, we have a line item for house rental on a nightly basis. And
Yeah.
that's allowed in certain zoning districts, and we've all talked about that in the past. But the house rental on a nightly basis does not have a corresponding definition in section 1510.140, and that really, I think, needs to be corrected. And the other thing just to add too is that it's just thinking, break down the words, house rental on a nightly basis. We don't have a definition even for the word house. We have dwelling. So I think, and that was adopted in '95, and it's just been in there ever since, and I think that goes along
So
with what we've been talking about.
what if we said dwelling on a nightly basis?
That would be a step forward, because at least it's something you could take and try and understand better by looking in the definitions. I
Okay.
rely on the definitions
Tom?
a lot at work
I'm sure you do.
for that reason,
Tom, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so I think that we, as a commission, have looked at the other scenario where multiple people are living in a house. But, I personally have looked at it, I think we've discussed it before, that we consider that a hotel.
I think our definition of a hotel is over 5 rooms.
Over 5 rooms.
Over 5 rooms. We haven't, gone below that. And so when you have a fire in a hotel, Clinton, and you go to the hotel, who do you ask? Is everybody out of there?
So that's a good point. The fire code and the building code take care of that. They require sprinklers. They require fire alarm systems and notifications. We're talking about a single-family dwelling that was built in 1980, 1960, 2010. It was designed to be a single-family dwelling. None of these provisions are in these buildings now. So now we've turned this residence into, like you said, it is a hotel. It is a business. Even if it's only got 3 bedrooms, you're renting 3 bedrooms to 3 different people, and there's no owner, or I would even say property manager, somebody living on site, then you're a hotel. And so I'm not sure how I can't go back and tell them, as far as in your house, I can't tell you in your house to put a sprinkler system in. Now, if code says rent more than 3 rooms to 3 different people, it's a business, it's a commercial structure, then maybe that can change. But right now I have no control over that.
So that issue could be solved by changing the definition of a hotel. Instead of saying over 5, just redefine what a hotel is. A hotel is, a business rented nightly where multiple families live in it, but it's not owner occupied, something down that line. But then I guess that becomes a problem because then you get over the over 5 issue. Never mind. Forget it. That was a bad idea. Skip that one. Sorry. The over 5 issue is another issue.
And I'm not trying to get, pick. This is a handful of occupancies. That's more of an internal and a city thing. We don't have city code enforcement, but I still think there needs to be a definition of what that is. What is, because IBC, IFC, because jurisdictions do not allow you to rent nightly your home, you're supposed to live there. That's what a bed and breakfast. A bed and breakfast is me coming to your house, right? You're supposed to sit down, have breakfast, make me breakfast. You're supposed to get to know me. Hey, where are you from? So there's no definition in the building codes of just use my house. So that's why it's not in there, and it's becoming a problem nationwide. It will soon be addressed. It's just not addressed as of 2018.
And we do have multiple units that when within city limits that we deal with this on a yearly basis, And like I had a call this morning regarding a possible buy of a property, and they're like, well, can I rent out individual rooms? Not quite like a hostel, but I would rent to different people. And we don't have a definition for that. I mean, we have a definition for hostel, I believe. But, when you break it down, it's just, we have either owner occupied or whole house, but nothing stating the individual rooms in a whole house.
Okay, so...
Andy's got his hand up.
Oh, just a minute, Andy. I have a question. Our definition of hostel, a building or portion thereof, so say that building was a house, in which temporary or overnight lodging is provided for hikers, cyclists, or travelers, not generally traveling by car. So, you could say that is a house with 3 bedrooms, and you're going to rent each bedroom to a traveler who may or may not have arrived in a car. Now, if you go to Moby Dick Hostel and there's a fire, who are you going to ask if everybody's out?
owner, the occupant, the owner of the property that lives on the property.
But that definition of hostel doesn't say owner occupied.
I know, but you're asking about, I mean, that property, there's normally a person that lives there that either manages it and or lives
Right.
there.
Okay, so that's not what this says, though. So-
Right.
Okay, I see. Andy had his hand up, but so does Craig. So, Andy,
Oh,
go ahead.
so to that last point on the hostel, and then, so there isn't anything in the code that says that somebody has to live there. It just so happens that the one that we spoke about, you know, somebody does. But
Right.
but the
Okay.
thing I was originally wanting to say, it has to do with talking about multiple parties staying in a house that without the primary occupant present. I wanted to point everybody's attention to where that is permitted in our code currently, which is on page 9 of the packet.
Mm-hmm.
And it is in section 1510-226, land use is allowed for lodging. If you compare number 5 with number 6, you will see that, so whereas number 5 says that in a residential district, it must be the owner or the business owner's primary place of residence where you're renting out multiple rooms. But number 6 says that within the commercial districts, just 5 guest bedrooms regardless of building or business ownership. So nothing in there about,
Okay.
yeah. That's all.
Okay, so in a residential district, if you have 5 or less bedrooms, an owner has to live in them. If you're in a commercial and you have 5 or less, an owner doesn't have to live in it. But it doesn't fall within the hotel motel category of requiring fire suppression.
Correct.
Yeah, right, everybody? Yeah.
So
Somewhere,
we don't-
somewhere in there, I read that in that situation, there had to be not an owner I read it as not an owner occupied, but a manager occupied.
Yeah, so there's,
That's right here.
Where does it say it though?
on number 5, it says within the owner's property, but it says multifamily dwellings used for lodging purposes are not required to be a business or property's owner's residence. This shall be limited not to more than 5 apartment units. Is that what you're talking about?
Maybe I don't have it in front of me because I didn't print it out. I should have. And maybe I misread it. Maybe I thought it said you could be a manager occupied. Only because I was thinking that was the way we did everything. But that's
No,
definitely
that-
something that needs because that's actually an issue.
it's a safety issue.
It says
Right.
the rental of individual room for lodging purposes is not extended to apartment tenants, but I don't see anything that has manager. I just see owner's principal place, within the business owner's principal place. Oh, it says multifamily dwelling lodging units purposes are not required to be the business or the property owner's residence, but nothing about a manager.
Well, we should add manager. Let's just make a note to look at how we'd add a manager to that. Craig, you had your hand up quite a while ago.
Yeah, for one, I think the manager deal was in the Homer or one of the other.
That might be.
I think we're kind of going down a road I don't know that we really want to go down, and that's like we're trying to outline everything that you're not allowed to do. I mean, I agree with Clinton about what he's bringing up and the quandary it puts him in. Why can't we go the other way and say if it's not defined, it's not allowed?
Correct.
And,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where we
Does that
are
work?
with accessory dwelling units right now. It's not defined, so it's not allowed until we define it. Clinton, you have your hand
Does
up?
that work?
Yes, ma'am, and I think, yes, what's in our code now may not necessarily be correct or safe or and I think that's why we're having this work session, right? We're trying to get this hemmed down. And again, like you alluded to, you said, well, if we don't define it, it's referred to IBC, IFC. And this is an exact example of why referring to the IFC and IBC is perfect, because if you go to page 10, it's clear as mud, or clear as day there, because it starts talking about boarding houses, and it talks about 16 or 15 occupants, 16 or more occupants. You've got to read the definition more in line with what we are seeing. Now, the problem is businesses / homes are already built, and enforcing some code and placing them, they were in an R3 and now they're in R2 or vice versa. It's difficult, and that may be a separate code work session issue about how you address if I own an apartment building and now I turn it into a huge hotel or whatever. But then it needs to come up to code. But if it's been used for the same thing, I can't make them all of a sudden come up to code and put sprinklers or alarm systems or things like that. So, but if you'll see that kind of the boarding house, that whole boarding house really kind of sums up some of those definitions that we're just talking about right now. But they don't state on and on, right? Because the code addresses that. The more stringent you go up, the more safety factors is required for that building. Of course, this is for new construction. We don't have a whole lot of options for existing structures in this particular code.
So on that page 10 that you referenced, Clinton, they talk about the number of occupants, not the number of rooms, which would be hard, I think. Jackie, go ahead.
So, I just have to sort of pick your brain, Cindy, yours, Craig, and yours, Tom, because I think that it was like at least 3 years ago, if not more, that we discussed, there was a situation where we had I believe it was a CUP that came forward, and at the time, Stefan had attended the meeting, stated that he had requested for them to add the fireproof in between the rooms. Do you remember that? So
Yep.
is that something that's possible, Clinton? Like, I don't know how we would address it, but that may, if you fall into that category, maybe that's a requirement that it's like, in order for you to operate, this is what has to happen. It's like, I only remember bits of it, but I just remember us talking about it.
The change in use is the only time I can really say, okay, now it adds sheetrock, and add a 1-2 hour fire protection between each room or between each floor. But if this place or this business has not changed their use at all, I don't know when, and Madam Chair, you brought this up, I don't know when Moby Dick became a hostel, probably before I even thought about Alaska. So now telling them, oh, you got to put in sheetrock or an alarm system, that's where you find it very difficult. But this is more for enacting now and saying, okay, now you're changing your 6-bedroom, 4-bedroom apartment building into a nightly rental. Well, then now we can say, okay, all the corridors have got to be 2-hour fire protected. You need a fire alarm system, full stations, etc. That's what the benefit of doing this would do, taking these definitions versus, we're not going to be able to do that on some of these existing. And I'm not trying to. They've been doing it, and it's been allowed. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for when you change your use.
Well, the situation what Stefan was talking about, that was changing it from an apartment it was kind of apartments in a house, and then they were trying to go to nightly. And he went in and told them, look, I'm going to let you, I think it was just a couple of years ago, said, we'll let you get through this season if you just do these windows that were interior windows to a hallway, to a stairwell. Says, you got to do that before the summer goes on. These other things, we're giving you a year to take care of. But I do think there is something, if I'm not correct, that, if there's a safety code issue that's put into place, if the city council said, yes, this is a safety issue that we want to upgrade, and a lot of these old buildings that truly just aren't safe according to today's world, where people don't think, they just assume that when I go into this lodging unit that certain standards are done. And if Seward is the place that says, no, we are going to enforce that, then I think we can, and we can give people 2 or 3 years. I mean, if we want to address that, I think legally we can, if I'm not incorrect.
Seward is a deferred city, meaning we manage our own codes, IFC, IBC, International Mechanical Code, Electrical Code, etc. We basically, you guys and City Council can do whatever you want as long as you do not go below state standard. As long as we meet state standards, you can be as stringent and as tight as you want to be. But that is definitely an option. Yes, you can say within 2 years, 3 years, you have to be up to 2018 IFC or whatever the adopted code is. So just give you that history on that.
Right, and if we want to do something about the houses, which really is, I think most of the things you've talked about are covered in one way or another, but, homes, and these are not homes in residential, they're homes in central business, office residential, auto commercial, that are being rented to multiple people without an owner occupied, then that's just, we're going to have to put it, since we have that issue and it's not really handled someplace else, and it really is a hotel, but maybe they don't have to have the fire suppression and some of the other things that a hotel has. But unless we're saying they do have to have the fire suppression, but either way, but that could, maybe we just need one more definition that says, in these situations, if you don't have somebody living on the premises, either a manager or an owner, then, you're a hotel. And that puts you into the category of having to meet the criteria of a hotel. And that's just what it is. Because I've been under the assumption that that's the way it's been.
Jackie, in your review of Homer and Kenai, did they have a definition that met the short-term rental definition that we needed to find? Okay, so I think we're all in agreement that
they have the bed and breakfast, and
we have a bed.
we have the bed and breakfast, but that's the only definition that they have. So they don't address the other districts. They address that a bed and breakfast, you must be owner occupied. Somebody must be there.
Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't address what we're talking about, where somebody owns a house and rents each bedroom out to a different couple or something like that. Okay. So let's take a note. We need to get a short-term rental definition. And so Jackie has added, starting on page 18 through 20, a bunch of verbiage about short-term rentals. And that's a pretty in-depth discussion, so I think that we should talk about that, because that would be kind of a bigger code change than just adding a definition. If we look at everything that they are wanting, or that they put forward for us for review. So can we go through our definitions, we're only at 6:45, and see which ones we can get rid of because they're covered in the, building code or the fire code? Can we look at that? So, what blew me away was the first one we have is a duplex mobile home. But we don't have just duplex, so that was kind of weird. And I don't see it, not that it has to be in these others, because, I mean, it could just be a dwelling unit. I don't know why we have a duplex mobile home.
I marked down
It's the
that it
very
should just
first
be
one on
eliminated, the
fourth
whole line. We
Yeah.
don't need duplex, a mobile home's defined, and we know what a duplex is.
And
Yeah,
we also
so-
have two-family or duplex on page 6M. So we have mobile home modular, but yeah,
Yeah, we have, so that's in 8, and we can get rid of that. Dwelling unit is in 8 and in 15. Is there a reason we have them in both places that you're aware of, Jackie?
I believe that it has to do with other portions of our code where we reference a dwelling unit or a unit, and I think that that's why it's listed in two different places. But I have not gone down that rabbit hole.
Okay. Is section 8 businesses? Is that what section 8 is?
Yes, it's the definitions for the business license, the mobile home parks, the
But couldn't you just say, see definitions in planning? in
Yes.
Title 15? for
yes, we
those?
could.
Okay.
We could reference all
All
of
right.
those into Title 15.
All right. So, the bottom of the page is the start of Title 15. And then on page 5 is where we get into specifics.
So can we back up a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, so it says manufactured housing. Why do we need to have a definition of manufactured housing?
We
Do
don't.
we care? House is pre-manufactured, partially pre-manufactured, completely pre-manufactured. All those houses, regardless of those definitions, require the same electrical, fire, all the codes. Which is different than a mobile home. Mobile homes have Chapter 25, Title 24, Chapter 20. They have different insulation requirements and so forth. But manufactured homes require all the same construction codes as a non-pre. Clinton's saying something.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
Farr, the IBC, I should say the IRC, Seward will never have any more, manufactured homes. It will not allow that. So you won't see those anymore in Seward because of our adoption of the local codes. They're not accepted.
Okay. I noticed that both Kenai and Homer have definitions for mobile homes and manufactured homes. But what you're saying, Clinton, is modular manufactured homes will not be allowed in Seward in the future.
Not modular. You can get an engineered modular home, meaning they bring pieces at a time and set it up. If it's engineered to code, that's
Okay.
acceptable. There will not be any brought in on a trailer and sat down. That's, the typical mobile home that you're thinking of. That will not be allowed in Seward because of code.
Okay, so if that's the case,
We've never allowed trailer houses inside the city limits.
You do. You have a couple actually.
Well, we may have a couple that are non-conforming, but since I've been here in the 40 years, it's been that we haven't allowed them.
Right. And
So-
that's a code adoption. So you can get rid of that unless you just need to reference that for future non-conforming things. But yeah, they won't be allowed.
Okay, so is that a manufactured home then?
Yes.
Okay.
Manufactured home.
So we don't want to look at any manufactured homes definitions. And so, okay,
And
So
I
that
can,
can come
like
out.
you were saying,
Well-
I can reference the others in the land use definition. So I
Yeah.
will, when we get to that point of rewriting and deleting, I will make sure that that's included.
And that would be the
Okay.
same thing for mobile home and mobile home park. I mean, either one of those should be taken out too, because they're just not allowed.
right. But that last one, in 8 on page 4, Clinton, that can stay, or it can be moved, if we make sure it's in Title 15,
Yeah, you can just
modular.
or just say C, IBC, or IRC, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
CIRC, okay.
But speaking of that, in what situation does it make a difference if it's a modular or a prefab? It doesn't. We don't even have to reference it because those things still have to meet standard construction code. You can just skip it. It doesn't even need to be there. Because today we have partially, we have, trusses, we have whole walls, we have sections.
Yep.
That's all okay. We don't care as a city. You want to build your house that way? And we're getting more and more of that is getting built inside
And then we just say, talk to the building department.
Well, you don't have to say anything because it falls under the building department already.
I know
Just
when
be
they call
effective.
us though, we'll just say, talk to them.
Yeah. All right, that's all I had to say on that.
Okay, all right, we're moving on to the Title 15 definition, and we're trying to see if what we have is addressed in the IBC, the IFC, or the IRC, or do we need it? Okay. Accessory building. We need it
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
because it's not anywhere else,
it's not anywhere else.
okay? Accessory or mother-in-law apartment. Or apartment, comma, which bugged me that it was written like that. Apartment efficiency is how it's written. Do we need that?
We need to get rid of the mother-in-law apartment and just have it be an efficiency apartment because that's the new development requirement code that we changed.
Right, but we have it, I don't know why we have it listed there. Why don't we just have it under dwellings, apartment, comma, efficiency?
Those are
Why
all
do we
pla-
call it accessory?
Those are all places where they're telling you to cross-reference and look elsewhere for
Yeah,
it. So if you're, if you're a lay person and you're like, oh, one of those mother-in-law apartments, and then you see it in there and it's saying, no, go to dwelling section. That's where we want it. So
And look at efficiency apartment.
I mean, if you guys want to clean all that up and get rid of the cross-referencing terms, that's one thing. But there's no
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
when somebody calls us, we go to it, but like Andy's saying, somebody may not know. They're just knowing that it used to be called a mother-in-law's apartment, and they can reference and see the definition under efficiency.
Okay. Because we have to have that because it's not covered in the IBC, IFC, or IRC. It's not covered under dwelling, a building that contains one or two dwelling units used, intended, or designed to be used, rented, leased, let, or hired out to be occupied for living purposes. It doesn't fit that definition?
For us,
Because
this dwelling, they're basically dwelling unit, period. They don't mention, mother-in-law or accessory. Now, the 2021 codes we're going to have to have this meeting again in a few years, so they are going to list this as, because of the tiny home movement, because of all this, they are going to come out with that. But right now, we I do not look at a mother-in-law apartment as its own thing. You're either part of the building or you're not.
And we have our development requirements that specifically state a square footage for those.
Yeah.
That's the studio, 2 down.
Yeah, but it's also the efficiency part.
There's no, so what the efficiency apartment is allowed in all the residential zoning districts. It's not allowed in HC, not allowed in CB. And what it does is it basically says, so as a homeowner, I'm allowed to sort of squeeze in one extra little dwelling unit into a portion of my house with a single combined kitchen, sleeping space, and then a little bathroom. And it's what it's doing is it's bringing up our housing, densities a little bit and allowing that without any restrictions on renting of it. Unlike the guest house, which is for non-paying guests, which we'll get to. So that's what the efficiency apartment thing is all about. Do we need it to be in our definitions?
Jackie, is what you're saying why we need it is because we reference square footage in studio apartments? But
Well-
we have that, right?
Yeah, we have the studio apartments. The back and forth that we had when we discussed efficiency versus studio was the efficiency was not a profitable thing. Like you couldn't rent it short term, but if you had somebody that, was living in it long term, that was doable. But we don't have anything in the code that's in that definition that states that it has to be long term. So somebody could, right now, the way I read the code, somebody could put in a mother-in-law's or efficiency apartment and then turn around and do nightly rentals.
And what's wrong with that? Nothing.
Nothing.
Right.
No, nothing.
So
Nothing.
the studio apartment is at 350 square feet?
500 square feet. And when we discussed that, when we
Sorry,
did
300.
that,
Oh, 500.
500 square feet.
I was getting back to that because we do have the two definitions. If it's under 500, there's a parking difference, and that's why we had it, not because it's, where it could be used or whatever, but we have the efficiency for the studio, whichever was 500 square feet, was because we put in a new parking regulation for that.
Right.
And we also, at that time, when we did the parking, it was a discussion with Stefan that, anything under 500 square feet, but there are certain requirements in the building code. I'm not sure if I'm right here, but there are certain requirements in that building code that, for spatial, having your kitchen, having your bathroom, doors opening, exits. So I think that 350 is where that came into play, because Stefan's like, you're not going to really want to go under that 350 number. So I get that.
Right. No, I said 350, I meant 500.
Okay.
So,
Okay, the big difference I see with this efficiency apartment is it is attached to a dwelling.
Correct.
It's not standalone. Studio apartments don't have to be, it doesn't have to share a wall with a single family dwelling unit based on this definition. Okay?
Correct.
So I could have a studio apartment on my, like if I owned this 50 by 100 lot next to me, I could put one studio apartment on it. Yeah? Okay.
If you got a
All right.
CUP,
If you have a CUP for studio apartments, require a conditional use permit.
and
Okay. Well, then you can put conditions on me, which is why we don't need a lot of detail.
Right.
Because if we fall outside of this, we can in the conditional use process, like we did with that firewall, we can add those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
well, and the other thing is that for definition purposes, it should just be attached or detached. I mean, we don't have to have a different word if it's attached and another word, because that was, everybody understands, it's either attached or it's detached.
Right.
So we should change the definition to attached or detached. And then now you have those definitions, and then you just say it's an efficiency. Efficiency is under 500 square feet. You don't have to say whether it's attached or detached, because we already have a definition of what an attached and a detached is.
So, right now, our efficiencies are attached, but you're saying we don't need to put that in the definition of efficiency? Under the definition of attached, we're gonna say, here's what needs to be attached? I'm not clear on that, Tom.
Well, if somebody wants to build an apartment, it's either attached on their property, it's either attached or detached. If you want to do an efficiency apartment, it's either attached or detached. Maybe we don't allow under the land use, we don't allow detached efficiencies. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying this. I'm not trying to pick our thing, but the thing is, we already have attached and detached, and we already have apartments and efficiencies. I mean, again, we're coming up with a whole other word. We don't really need to have a whole other word. We might need to correct something else to make it more reader friendly in other areas. And we got to find out where those areas are.
Okay.
I like the idea
No,
of trying to go a little more simpler, sort of like Kenai and Homer. So maybe we just have, instead of all these listed out, they've sort of combined them all. So maybe we have apartment, and then under apartment, we have the different types. So regardless, you're looking at building on an apartment, we give what the definition of apartment is, and then if they want something under 500 square feet, it would say that. So you wouldn't have to go to dwelling for apartment, or a mother-in-law's apartment, or efficiency apartment. You would just go to apartment, and then we would have them broke down sort of in the same area. Does that make sense?
Does to me.
yeah. Homer has,
Clinton's had his hand up for a bit.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Clinton.
Does page 17, the new definition accessory dwelling unit, not cover all of this? Every bit of this?
No,
Doesn't?
no. Accessory dwelling unit is a standalone
But it,
residential
right, but
thing on your property.
But it also says it goes by many different names, including accessory apartments, secondary suites, granny flats.
it kind of says the same thing. Whether it touches your house or not, it kind of means the same thing, doesn't it?
It also says, or a new standalone accessory structure or converted portions of existing standalone structures.
It says it may be attached to a house, or it can be a standalone unit. So it really, to me, that one definition explains everything you're talking about
All
right
of
now.
those things.
Everything.
Just, yeah, we could take efficiency apartment, and then you could look down the list and you could take that guest house and combine them into one, which is accessory dwelling unit, as Clint's pointing out there, right?
And apartment, studio apartment, like all of those could fit under accessory dwelling units.
That would reduce the number of definitions.
Yeah. So we could add the definition of accessory dwelling unit, and then incorporate those apartments. Because it does cover, that definition is from the American Planning Association, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, I really like it. I think it just says everything. You can get rid of so many definitions by just going to that guest house, that's efficiency apartment, grandma, mother-in-law, I mean, it's all of these.
So just so everybody knows too, that combining those would also have the effect of permitting a little, detached accessory dwelling unit, detached on, if you were to allow it in the same amount of zoning districts as efficiency apartments, it would increase the number of zoning districts wherein that type of housing was allowed. So there's the two things that I know you guys will get to because you're very experienced in all this, but you're going to talk about adding ADUs, then you're going to start talking about where are we going to allow the ADUs, right?
Everywhere we can.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
another meeting, another
If it
meeting.
needs setbacks,
I see topics in our future, guys.
yeah.
We can't go there, it's not on our list tonight.
So that is a possible definition. And so what Clinton's saying, we can review and bring back to you a way that it could possibly be incorporated with our definitions to shrink the amount of definitions we have.
When we bring this back, I'd like to see it in the format that it'll look in an ordinance where it's strike through for deletions, bold for additions.
Yep.
So in this case, we'd see strike through for apartment efficiency, apartment studio, guest house,
All of that, including,
single family detached, would all come under ADU.
yeah, I can do that for the next work session. Put it in the ordinance, like how, sort of take what we've got from Homer, what we've got from Kenai, incorporate it with ours and with the definitions that we've received from the Planning Association, and bring it back to you in that form, as well as the changes that would be required in the other portions of the code and the land use table.
And the IBC, IFC, and IRC
Yep,
I mean, I don't even know if that definition, you might, like if we say we're going to use the definition of guest room from the IBC, are we going to have guest room in Title 15 and say CI IBC?
we might do exactly like Homer has and just put it at the very beginning of our definitions. If it's not referenced, then you need to reference those codes.
All those other codes?
Yeah, so you as a layman is going in and looking and you're like, okay, my thing's not listed. Right at the very top it states, hey, you need to look at these portions of the code.
But are the IFC and the IBC and the IRC easily accessible through the City of Seward website?
The City of Seward is required to maintain 3 copies at all times for public viewing.
I know, but that means you can't do it from home like you can with the city code, that you have to go in.
Right, and of course, ICC wants to charge you for everything, but I have always been able to Google 2012 IBC, IRC, and find a PDF copy. Right?
Okay.
It takes me no more than 3 minutes.
Okay, all right, as long as we're not making it harder on people.
And we can, and again, like you just referenced, it is doable that we could put that link on the web page and they could click on it and then it would take them through those portions. So we can figure that out.
Okay, all right.
So, hey, Jackie,
Yep.
if you're going to do the strikeout and stuff, the other thing when you do that definition, if we're striking something out, and whatever we're striking out is going to be covered in a different section, can we make that little note? Okay, I just want to make sure we had that. So as we're going through it, we can jump back and forth and see where things are.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll do that like our ordinances are, but I'll also do the one that we've done before, for the work session. I'll give you the draft, but there will be those tabs that give you the notes that tells you why we're doing what we're doing.
That'd be really great.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to keep what you've given us tonight because it's got all of it in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to come back with additions in bold, deletions and strike-throughs, notes saying this is where this is going to show up or where we took it away from.
Yes.
And you're going to narrow ours down to not define a definition that's in the IBC, IFC, IRC, and you're going to try to get closer to something simpler like Homer or Kenai.
Correct.
Okay,
So
so that'll be a whole nother work session, but in the meantime, if we want, instead of having to go back and redo the ordinance with a definition for an accessory dwelling unit or short-term rental, I think we should discuss those two separate things at a separate work session that we can advertise those topics, because we didn't really advertise accessory dwelling units or short-term rentals definitions, because I think that's going to hit home with a few people in town, and they might want to attend, speak up, give input.
So, Cindy, what I'm thinking is we can, at our February 2nd meeting, we can discuss topics. But I think that if I come back for our February meeting with the draft of what these definitions would look like, not the February 2nd, but the February 19th, I think it is, meeting, with what this would look like, and then on the premise that if we get through that we could also speak about these other definitions and or schedule another work session for ADUs and short-term rental.
Okay. We also have our annual priorities to get to council. What's our deadline on getting those to council?
So we're going to discuss that on the second. We'll have the review of it on February 19th. We'll have a work session, and then we'll schedule in March. That's on our topic for February 2nd, is to pick the date in March that works for the commission to have the joint work session to discuss our priorities.
With the council. Okay, but we want to have an idea what we're going to discuss with them. So that's on our work session in February. So is this going to move to March then?
No,
what part?
Our priorities work session normally never takes more than an hour, so I think that we can do the work session from 6 to 7 regarding our priorities, and then from the 7 to 8 discuss that draft of the definitions.
And accessory dwelling units and short-term rentals, because I can't see us turning in an ordinance, changing definitions, and then going back in the next 3 months, adding to that ordinance with ADUs and short-term rental definitions.
If you want, we could do the work session with our priorities and the discussion of definition and code change for accessory dwelling units and short-term rental. So then we could have all of that in February on the 19th, and then our March meeting, we would bring forward the ordinance with all those changes incorporated.
Let's think about that between now and our meeting, our real meeting in February.
Yep.
And if we could advertise that work session as discussing our annual priorities and definitions in Title 15 to include dwelling, lodging, housing, and adding accessory dwelling units and short-term rentals. Because we've had some discussion of them tonight, the need for a definition for short-term rentals and how accessory dwelling units could narrow our other ones. So it might not be that long of a talk, since we've kind of hit on it a little tonight, and we maybe could get it all done in an hour. If we get the packet in time and we've all read it, we may get it done in an hour.
We will
I
get
have a
you,
recommendation.
yeah,
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, could we do our priorities, the hour before our February 2nd meeting?
Or
Yeah,
any
oh.
regular.
Yeah?
yeah, you want to,
Yeah.
we could do it even during the regular meeting under new discussion
Put it on the
items.
agenda.
Oh,
I would rather do that, and because we're really trying to stuff a bunch of things on something else here, and
That sounds
we're
great.
Yeah.
asking for the EDUs. I don't want them there for our priorities. It's just,
Yeah, so we'll
yeah.
we'll add it as a discussion item.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give you the draft of what was last year, so we'll have it as a discussion item on our February 2nd agenda.
Okay.
And then we'll, for our work session, we'll have the draft and the including of possible ADUs and short-term lodging, or short-term rental. Does that
Good.
work?
That
Okay.
sounds good. Yeah, yeah. Do we have a lot on our agenda at our first meeting in February right now? No? I see two heads shaking no. Okay. Well then, good. We'll have time to discuss. Okay.
Perfect.
so I have a couple other things for this, the stuff we're going over tonight.
Sure, Tom.
Okay, so on page 8A, it describes the B&B,
Yep.
and I think it's in one of the other definitions, but in that definition, it doesn't talk about the meal. I think it's been generally accepted in Alaska that a B&B can only serve one meal per day, and that should be in that definition.
I noticed somewhere in here that one of the definitions says you must serve a meal. And I'm thinking, you don't have to.
Correct, it just says maximum, but can only serve one meal a day.
Yeah, up to, and somewhere it does say that. I circled it.
You're
but it-
right.
it might have been
I remember
over.
reading it too. I remember that. Where was it?
Okay, well, we should work on that wherever it is and find it and straighten that one out too, because
Okay.
somebody wants
Yeah.
a B&B and they don't want to serve a meal.
Yeah.
That's part of their advertising. And then I think I had under B, and I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but it talked about a boarding house,
Mm-hmm.
and it talked about that the way they serve the meal, they can't have a menu, it's kind of restricted.
Yeah, it says
And
meals
that-
may be regularly prepared and served for compensation at a table, family style, without service or ordering individual portions from a menu.
Where is that?
On page 8B,
B, and I think that comes from a historic definition of a boarding house.
I think it does
Anyway,
too.
I would just drop the whole section on how they serve meals. I mean, they can serve meals. It's a boarding house. They serve meals. But you can't enforce it. So why write it that way?
Right.
I mean, let whoever wants to do a boarding house, so they're doing a boarding house, they do their meals the way they want to. But so
I
had
got
that one on
it.
there. Okay, and then on page 9, number 4, this is something that for more than a decade, I always assumed that, you could only, in a B&B, you could only rent half your bedrooms, which means you could only, if you have 5 rooms in the house or 7 rooms in the house, you could only rent 2 or 3. But something came up earlier last year. I think we were talking to Stefan, and somehow he said, "Oh no, we round those numbers up, and we can't do that. This ordinance says 50%. That means
We don't
2
round
of
those up.
5 rooms. But
We-
3 rooms is 60%.
Yeah, we don't round them up. But I know that
In
when,
a conversation we had, Stefan was saying something about, well, we round it up. If they have 5 rooms, they can rent 3 of them. So we either have to put in round it up, or it's 50%. And
yeah,
that needs to be correct, because that came up in one of our our conversations with Stefan about life safety, and maybe it was somebody else, maybe it was safety, but we were talking about life safety, and they were rounding up, and that was the first time I'd ever heard that. And it wasn't appropriate to discuss it at that meeting.
I do remember that, Tom, and I think I have notes on it.
Okay,
We discussed it when we were discussing lodging in general.
Go ahead, Clinton.
That would have nothing to do with IBC, IRC, or ISC.
correct.
That's strictly what you guys want to put in this code. If I have a 4-bedroom house, as the fire chief, I do not see a problem with you renting 3 bedrooms to the same family. So that's strictly on how you want to word this. That doesn't, to me, that's not a safety factor. If you live in the home, you know, and you have 10 bedrooms, if you rent 9 of them, what's the difference?
Well, the difference is, Clinton, that our code doesn't allow it. So if we have to follow IBC and IFC, then the building and fire departments have to follow Title 15.
You're correct. I agree. What I'm saying is that's where you could possibly change. That's what Mr. Swan was saying was maybe we should change that wording where it's not 50%, where it's.
No, it's 50%. We just have to make sure the fire department
And
And the
are-
building department
are
follows.
out there, because we ran into it with the modular properties out there at Icicle that we just discussed the other day, where all of a sudden somebody in the city has decided, oh, I have the right to give you that, you know, action. And we're going to hold it. Oh, that takes the CUP. You got to do it every single year. We just ran into it.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and I see it here again where someone has decided, oh, look at the fire code doesn't allow, says it's okay, so I'll make this unilateral decision that it's okay. And I saw it then, and I'm going like, hold it, guys.
And if
We have a code. Follow the code.
Right. If that happened, I'll address it. But I can tell you, we don't even look at the bedrooms. We get our application from community development, and if community development does not approve it because of the number of bedrooms, we don't even go inspect it. So that's kind of a moot point as far as the fire department is concerned. We strictly
Well,
they
on
count.
that, Clinton, you are the one that community development, fire department is community development, that's fire department to look at fire safety or safety health. They don't go into the building, you are.
Right.
So if you're going into a B&B, a home, and they have 5 bedrooms, and you say, oh, I got to look at all the rooms, and they're going like, well, I guess this is where some of that, the information we're getting off the web, how many rooms they're actually renting compared to how many rooms they're saying they're renting. But there is something, and if someone's being allowed to do it, and somebody's not telling them, I didn't mean anything kind of negative. It's more of just making sure that point gets brought up every once in a while.
You're right, and that's part of that whole code enforcement, and we're put into a pickle because we have this online ad for 4 bedrooms out of a 5-bedroom house, and the owner is telling me, nope, I only rent 2 of them. I'm kind of in a pickle. What do I do? Because I can't call him out. What? I mean,
We write them a letter.
And you're correct. That is for the internet worm, the information we're getting off the internet through, and I'm talking not planning and zoning, but the city. The planning and zoning, none of this is our responsibility.
And
just
just
take the
so everyone knows that since we started the actual short-term rental applications, those things have been identified and corrected. And I think that Stefan would agree with me that there have been a couple in the past that were rounded up by previous administration, but since 2019, we've really worked hard on making sure that they're compliant with the way the code is.
Okay, I found the bed and breakfast definition. It's in Kenai that says no more than 1 meal served daily. that we were looking to find which one we wanted to use.
Ah, perfect.
So the Kenai one is the one we're gonna use.
Let me go back to what Clinton was saying.
Yep, go back.
I think do we have it clear that fire department is not, fire department is there for fire code, not to enforce compliance with the rest of the code?
So as a city official, I would be, charged with any city ordinance, city code. Now, I do not write tickets. However, if, say, you said, yep, I got 4 parking spaces, and I show up and there's not even 1 parking space, like, you've got, whatever reason, I've got all campers parked there, I don't know, then I notify through the proper channels that there's not the correct number of parking spaces. And then up to that department that's in charge of that arena to seek whatever, to deny the permit and then go through the appeals process. So, yes, I'm not a code enforcement officer. I can do fines. I do have it in my code to do fines for IFC and IBC violations. But for just general city code, I would actually have to refer that to the police department as a city code violation.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
And the right thing to do would be that you report it and then they don't get a permit. And then they work through the channels, the proper channels, to correct all their infractions and get a permit.
Exactly. If it was a city code violation and did not meet code, then my inspection report, community development is handling the lighting permits. I would say they do not meet, what their application states, that they're in violation, and then community development would deny the permit, and we have a set a set appeals process in the city, which includes going to council to state. So it's
Okay. All right. So we're kind of off topic on that. So we're going to go back to definitions.
I'm done.
I have this. I ran into this in a couple of places, and I'm looking at the fire code on page 11, and the building code might say, it says it in 2 different places. So under sleeping unit in the fire code, it says a room or space in which people sleep, which can also include permanent provisions for living, eating, and either sanitation or kitchen facilities, but not both. Okay? And then if you turn the page and look at the building code under sleeping unit, it's the same. It can't have both sanitation and kitchen, but under dwelling unit, it has to have both sanitation and cooking. I was just a little confused on that.
in a dwelling unit. A dwelling unit would be more of a house, and I understand it is a little kind of clear as mud. It's going to be a house. So what they're trying to say is you've got to have a wall separating where you poop and where you eat. That's what they're trying to say. So you either...
Well, that's what I gathered, and in a sleeping unit, that's like a motel unit. So they don't want you to have... But there is a wall. There's a bathroom, like in our studio apartments. Don't they have little efficiency kitchens, and then there's a bathroom?
They do, but I have been in a hotel room before where the entire bathroom was open to the bedroom, but there was no cooking facility. There was no hot plate. There was no cooking. And vice versa, I've been where the bathroom had a wall, and then there was a little hot plate, kitchenette, whatever. So they're just saying separate the two.
Okay.
However you want to do it, it doesn't matter.
One of them has to be behind a wall.
So if there is a wall, it's not a sleeping unit, it's a dwelling unit. If there's both, and there's a wall, it's now a dwelling unit.
If there's both, there has to be one wall. It can still be a sleeping unit because...
No, it can't. It can't have both. It can't have both. It's then a dwelling unit.
That's okay, because then if it's a dwelling unit, then all the codes that go to dwelling units, it's okay for it to be that way.
Right, I was
Okay.
just,
All right, it's not a problem.
yeah, I just wanted to see if that could be combined or not, but evidently it can't be because of the instances where there might not be a wall. Okay,
This is putting.
That's gonna be fixed in the building code there too.
it's out of the building code.
Yeah.
Right. And it's putting sleeping units in various parts of a building where it's not a dwelling unit, is what it's trying to say. So I have a little efficiency apartment, sleeping area. I can have a bed and a bathroom inside my, I don't want to say this, gas station or whatever. We're trying to talk about a sleeping unit. Well, why is that important? Well, if you're going to have a bed and a bathroom in your gas station, the back of your service station, you got to have an emergency egress window. So that's the reason we're defining what a sleeping unit is, because it can be.
Okay. Because there's other requirements. All right. Okay. Any other comments? We have another 25 minutes or so to go if we want.
I only have one.
Are we ready for this to go back to community development to configure, condense, and come back to us?
I only
I see.
have one comment.
Yes, Tom?
Hey, Vanessa, you having fun yet?
Welcome!
There'll be a test at the end.
Kelly's already left. Where'd Kelly go?
She's there.
I don't see her anymore. Somebody changed my screen.
Looks like Vanessa froze.
Vanessa froze.
I'm ready for this. I am ready for this to go back to community development.
Thanks, Tom. Nathaniel's shaking his head yes. Craig is kind of yes. Vanessa is clear. It's clear, right, Vanessa? It's ready to go back and be put in a better format.
It's gonna be perfect.
All right.
Clear as mud, right,
Okay, thank you,
Clinton?
Clinton.
I said clear as mud, right, Clinton?
Exactly, perfect.
All right. Well, I'm sure if they have questions while they're redoing it, Clinton, they'll get to you. So thank you all for making this happen. I know that these definitions have been a little bit of a thorn in our side for a while, and we're going to get that pulled out. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Our next meeting is February 2nd. That's Tuesday in 2 weeks. And we'll have a no, we're not having any work session in front. We're having our regular scheduled meeting with a discussion of priorities. All right. Okay. Looking forward to it.
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Clinton.
Thanks. Bye. I'm leaving.